Monday of Smart Means Business. This is the 410. Sometimes you get to realize how life is evolving every other time that passes by, and you realize as an individual, sometimes you're employed somewhere and maybe the money is quite enough for you, but then you're not safe as an individual. The other thing has actually caught me, the other discussion we've had has actually caught my attention, thinking of how safe can you be at your workplace? Do you ever have these discussions with your employees, rather with your employers, you as an employee? Well, I think it's very fundamental for you to at least have them at the back of your mind. Well, besides that, we'll be back from the break. Let's get into our Smb On Ground discussion. We're looking at the national identification registration issues here regarding NIRA and the national IDs renewal. Well, speaking of the renewal, the exercise is slated to start next year till 2024, and according to NIRA. But if you need to look at the situations here, as we get the public opinions on matters to do with that, a statement that was released earlier on was that if you want to have an express national identification card, it's 50,000. And replacement of your national ID will take you 200,000 Ugandan shillings. And of course, everyone had issues regarding that, and they all had opinions on that same matter. But here, we're going to have more of the public opinion in regards to the renewal of the national IDs, and also on the matters to do with the charges that are attached to these particular ones. Let's have more with Bariji Andrew.
Thank you very much, Jerome Paul Sonko. And today it's a Monday, and we are just right here at the Nile Avenue. Quite a calm place, not so really much so busy. And of course, this is what is really transpiring on a Monday like this, as people definitely are waking up to go and pursue the business careers, to go pursue those occupations, of course, to earn an income. Today, the topic of discussion is largely on the national IDs and looking at the fees, you know, because we saw that ever since the Minister of Internal Affairs talked about renewing the exercise of renewing national IDs that is yet to start, that's next year till 2024, that will be 2023 till 2024. And of course, looking at the new identity cards which are right there. And what really got people's attention regarding this matter was the fees that were charged and put onto these identity cards. Looking at the fees, like 50,000, that's if you want something very quick and express, and 200,000, that's if you want, that's to change the details in case you're changing something on your ID that probably you made a mistake, or you lost your national ID and you want to get a new one, that coming down to 200,000 shillings. And of course, last week the members of parliament came up to express how unfair such an item, such an incidence is when it comes to the current economic fares, you know, how the economy is performing currently. That would be quite unfair. So I happened to walk around the streets on this particular street where I'm standing right now, and I got in touch with some people, just that unfortunately they weren't willing to speak on camera due to time. You know, it's a rush hour. As probably before we take you there, you can take a look at what's really transpiring there and see how probably Jesse can show you what, you know, how the situation is like. You know, it's right now, it's not so much congested like before, we're talking about a rush hour. So it's coming down a little bit. So still at that time when I got in touch with them, of course, majority were running to pursue their businesses. So that's how the situation is like on a Monday. And of course, you know, because it's the new day of the week, and definitely it's like, what can I say, what you do on Monday largely determines how the week will go. How you transact on Monday largely determines probably how the Tuesday or the other 4 days of the week will be. So it's very essential as a business person to ensure that you use always your weekend very well. So that's what is transpiring. Probably before we get into the report, just to show you a brief here at Nile Avenue, as people, of course, are heading to their workplaces, to their business premises. Now, regarding this particular aspect, when we talked about reaching out to the people on the streets, a majority were really not so happy, though, like, you know, all people are never the same. Each person can have actually their opinion regarding a matter. Some people seem okay, probably 50,000 doesn't seem to be an amount of money. But of course, if you are Ugandan, a typical hustler, right there, let me use that word, you know even what it means to get a 5,000 shilling a day. You know, it's not easy. For you, probably, if you're there and you're in position to actually get this amount of money, there are people that are living on that amount probably for 2 weeks. I mean, somebody's looking at 50,000 and it's going to survive on that for 2 weeks. But now here you see a scenario where you have to pay 50,000 to get a national ID. And remember, in the Uganda where we live currently, a national ID is something very important. Literally all, whatever you want to process in this country, it will be quite of great relevance. And also looking at people who don't have passports, they can actually travel to East African countries by simply presenting that's a national ID. That's through when they're using the road transportation, you know, using the buses to go into other areas. So when a 50,000 fee is imposed on them, it's really quite unfair to get something so quick. And you find that it's inevitable for you to leave, you know, without that national ID. And due to the bureaucratic procedures which take place to process an ID, you find that really very, very tricky. Actually, I was talking to one of the people on the streets, and he told me that he processed his national ID way back, but till this date, he hasn't yet gotten his national ID. Whenever he goes to the place where they told him to go to, that he doesn't. And you find that during all that time he's tossed around, he has spent quite an enormous amount of money, because now we are looking at money he has spent to give the officials, you know, to try to help him out to quicken his process, and things don't really go through like as he anticipates. Now, on the other side, we look at the transport he's putting in to reach out to those different districts levels, you know, to try to get this assistance, and it's not really working out for him. So such a person telling him to pay a 50,000 as an express probably has already lost trust in the system, you know. Remember, a national ID has a lifespan of 10 years. And of course, the first batch of the Ugandans that registered for this national IDs, that was in 2014, and quite a lot of centers were established to ensure that people get registered. Actually, schools were centers, people got registered, go there, I mean, for the national IDs. 2014, and now come 2024. Now that's a 10-year span. I mean, it's done. But definitely, not all people registered within that very period of time. Some actually registered 2 years earlier, you know, some actually registered like 22 2 years back. So different time varies, but definitely that won't count. Still by 2024, there is the necessity for somebody to go and enroll for a new national ID. So that was quite a cry from this person. Now, still looking at, before we even get to the 200,000, we are still looking at the 50,000 express. I mean, there were quite lots of complaints, you know. Somebody saying, I'm really even struggling to get what to eat. And you told me that if I want to get a national ID so fast, I have to pay 50,000. I mean, it was quite unfair. It's not my opinion, but I'm speaking for the people here. This is what they were saying. It's really very unfair. I mean, I struggle to get what to eat, and you're giving me 50,000. I mean, but majority of them have lost trust in the system, that even when they paid money to get their national IDs a little faster, they were a bit disappointed by the different people regarding that particular aspect. So you find that there is some loss of confidence which is being put out there from the people, and this prompted the members of parliament to come and really say something regarding this matter, to see that probably something could be done about it. You know, you never know. Perhaps someone was suggesting 50,000, at least if they could make it 20,000, you know, because at the end of the day, when I was interviewing these people, I told them, okay, if 50,000 is quite a lot of money for you to clear, how much money do you think is favorable for you? And a figure, of course, some said lesser than that, but the most common figure that was put out there was a figure of 20,000. You know, of course, some are suggesting 10,000. Actually, there is one who made it much more interesting when he said, why don't they make it 5,000? You know, that was something so interesting to hear from that. So you find that at least they call for reduction of the money that is needed the reduction of the fee that is needed to get an express, and it's inevitable. You know, like I told you when I was introducing this speech, in the country we live in, Uganda today, it's very inevitable for you to process, to do something, unless when you don't have a national ID, you are hindered in so many ways. And I gave you an example. A national ID, if you don't have a passport, you can travel to the neighboring East African countries, and actually, that's if you're using the road transport. So now getting back to the fee of 200,000, that got people very much more out. You know, they were thinking, what is really going on regarding this matter? You know, 200,000 is somebody's rent for 2 months. That's what some were saying. I mean, this is rent for 2 months, and you're telling me to pay this amount of money. And when you examine, because the 200,000 fee is for those who lost the ID and those who are trying, of course, you lost your ID, and those who made mistakes, you know, changes in those mistakes. And, you know, when we try to look at circumstances, how people lose IDs, some people don't really lose them simply because they do. You know, some of the people's IDs are in the police authorities. Probably they got, you know, got arrested by the police, and they took the national IDs, and some are really innocent regarding that matter. That's what these opinions from the people saying that the reason as why some of the national IDs got lost. So, and they're saying that they're not being really put into consideration. You know, 200,000 is quite a lot of money. You know, some families survive on that amount of money for a month, for an entire month, and you know, and they have to do quite a lot and lots of prospects. And yet matters seem to be getting much more worse day by day in this country economy. You know, recently we saw the bank rate now increased. The central bank rate, that's from 9% to 10%. So you can see that means the interest on loans is quite high. You know, and if the interest on loans is quite high, that means when the business people get this money from the banks at high interest rates, they're going to charge the people quite huge sums of money. You know, so the huge sums of money amidst that kind of a crisis where we see somebody is being told they have to pay 200,000, yet they haven't yet met the daily needs, let me say the necessities of life. That's quite, that's quite a little bit, so they feel it's unfair for such a fee to be there. Now we're looking at the inflation, you know, now at 10.7%, you know, that's October. So you can see how that really comes up, that when a Ugandan tries to think through and they try to put up things together, things don't really add up, and the 200,000 fee to pay for a national ID, you know, because probably they are replacing it, or probably because they made mistakes, it's quite unfair. So they are calling upon the government to be considerate. They are calling upon the officials, you know, and they are really hopeful, and they are really happy for the members of parliament for the initiative that they are taking place to ensure that these fees are actually scrapped off for the good of the common person. I'm Andrew Barija, and this is Smart Main's Business on Ground. This was a compile of the different personnels that I met on the street today, as of course I was doing a survey, walking around getting people's feedback regarding this matter of 200,000 and what do they think regarding that. Back to studio with Joram Paul Sonko.
All right, like I did say, that the issue to do with renewal of national IDs will be taking center stage with effect next year and then 2024. And of course, everybody has got their view regarding the same matter, but also the issue to do with the charges, the express fee charges of 50,000, and then also if you want to replace 200,000 Ugandan shillings, everyone has got their own issue, because of course we all know the struggle you pass through to get a national ID in this country, and only that clearly is another battle of its own. Well, that brings us to the end of Smart Means Business today, Monday. Hope your week has started on a high note like ours here on Smart24 TV. Just a quick reminder, we're on mainstream, channel 394 on Go TV, and then DSTV channel 372. As well, you can follow us on our social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. and as well as LinkedIn. But our website is www.smart24.tv. But do remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Smart24 TV Live, where we do stream live in case you missed any program or any interview in any way. But besides that, I do leave you with the SMB no comment. Till tomorrow, have a blessed day. Good morning.
Project meant for politics, and it achieved the politics. It should close. If we're honest enough, we would close it. It was very ambitious, not realistic. You cannot create 15 cities at once when we have even failed to sustain the only one we have. If we were serious, we would have helped Ginger. Ginger was more or less a city, but it collapsed, okay? We've not looked at reasons that collapsed the previous cities, but for politics, we created cities. It is not that wherever people concentrate should be a city. When people concentrate, there are things they need. They need social services, they need water, they need electricity, they need roads. You need social security for those people, okay? That's why you find destitutes everywhere without an answer. What is the social security measure for those people that fail in life? People they throw out of houses. What is the social security for them? There's no social security to talk about in this country. So before you even say it, for the little you have, the little we have, the only Kampala we have, before we set for that Kampala, we ambitiously went out for 15. We cannot manage them. It was a political tool. It achieved its target. That was to win votes, and that was all. They're not going to manage. They don't have money for facilities. They don't have money to facilitate the cities, to establish the structure, the administrative structure alone. Then the social amenities that you need there. It's a very expensive thing. Secondly, what is the policy that was informing the creation of these cities? What are the benchmarks? Should everyone who wakes up tomorrow with a number of people come up and say we need a district? What were the benchmarks? Because then whoever wanted a city was given. What are these cities known for? We should know these cities for particular things. Like we know some cities are administrative, others are commercial, others are tourist cities. Now these cities were scattered all around. Some of them in a very small space. Entebbe and Kampala, this distance is so small. What is the purpose of having Entebbe and Kampala? You can move all the administrative units of Kampala in Entebbe. That's where they were originally, by the way. People should know that originally administrative units were in Kampala. They were in Entebbe. They are moved and concentrated into the city here because there was commercial, where one would think it was meant to be commercial. Okay, where I would think an area would be for commercial purposes, okay? Now, even administration moved and followed commerce, okay? Now, as you move the city now to create another city in Entebbe, what is informing Entebbe? Is it tourism? Is it administration? What? What is informing Ginger? What is informing Soroti? Gulu? What is informing Gulu? What is there in Gulu? What is informing Hoima? Can we have a policy against which we create these cities? Besides, do we have the money? Everybody is striking because of money. Now we have had students are striking. They are not being paid. They're interns. They are not being paid. They're striking for payment. We have had salaries of teachers we had delayed. Salaries of administrators are delayed. If we don't even have the minimum to talk about, how can you talk of creating a city? A city calls for more than a name. It's not simply a name. What we have now today is that we have changed the names of administrative units. Today you can call them sub-counties. Tomorrow you can call them town councils. The other day municipalities. That's what it is.
What should the city have to be called a city?
There are minimum benchmarks you should have. First of all, the infrastructure setup should be sufficient to terminate an area to be a city. You should be able to supply people with water. You should be able to supply people with electricity. We have villages being called cities. We don't have electricity and you say you're in a city? Excuse me. In the village in darkness and you call it a city, I've not met it anywhere. But go to a bigger part of Masaka and a bigger part of those other areas, you'll find a lot of darkness and they are called cities. So if you want to term areas, in my own understanding, to qualify them to be cities, it's not just about a concentration of people, it is also services that you are extending to those people. And then you plan for that city because you know a city, you need an area that feeds into the city in terms of food. That's an agriculture area that's going to be a food basket for the cities. No planning.
So would you encourage Entebbe to